Greetings, traveler. YouTube and other platforms are full of videos that talk about video games, analyze them, go over their features, and everybody offers their own opinion about good game elements, bad game elements, and so on. However, I think that going into that process is a gigantic trap and one that should be avoided at all possible costs. So, today, what I want to do is explain that a little bit, what sort of situation I'm talking about, what what kind of analysis I think is very harmful and it's a trap for everybody watching it, and what we can do instead to make sure that thinking about games and analyzing them and looking deeper into their mechanics can be a beneficial process rather than one that just wastes time and is misleading. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 13 years. And in our work, not just in GDC, Vault, or other game industry related specific platforms, but also YouTube and other places as well, I have seen tons of times people showing a game and either reviewing it, analyzing its features, talking about what's good about it, what's bad about it. Often in more professional videos, game developers themselves talk about their own games that they have released already, why they were successful, why they were not successful, what was good about the development process, and so on. And that type of video is seen as a positive one. It's seen as a good research analysis of things that are out there and a good opportunity for other game designers to learn what other games did well, what they didn't do well, and so on. However, all of these things, in my view, fall simply under the category of survivorship bias. So if you don't know what the concept is that if you say, for example, humans survived because they had bigger brains than other animals, or than their cousins in the animal world, that is a logical fallacy. If you say that humans survived because we are the most adaptable of all species, that's why we survived and other species died out, that's a logical fallacy as well. If you say anything basically to show that that is the reason why humans survived or some other species survived, all of these statements are logical fallacies because there's no single reason for that, and the analysis itself comes after the fact. So evidently humans exist, so trying to explain why they survived or why other species didn't survive after the fact has essentially no value. It's just an armchair conversation and it could go either way. So here you might be thinking, that's a bold claim to make. Why shouldn't we watch analysis videos, or why shouldn't we watch reviews and postmortems and all that stuff? Well, postmortems are a little bit special, so I'll talk about them later. But first of all, I'm not saying that you shouldn't watch them. I'm saying that, in my view, they are not valuable at all. Their value is close to zero. Because after the fact, when you're trying to explain something, you can say anything you want about it. Let's say a game was released recently and it had a huge success. I could go in and say, well, it's because the graphics were great, or because the sound was great, or because the gameplay was great. And there exists no way in this world to quantify what I'm saying. There's no way for me to prove mathematically or otherwise that my statement is correct. If I say that, for example, a game was not successful because it didn't take advantage of any of the current trends in music or in pop culture or whatever, I can make that claim, and my claim is not provable. I cannot prove in any way that my claim is true and it is the reason why something was successful or not. This is a point that I think takes some time to sink in. And the more you realize it, the more scary it becomes, because basically pop culture and YouTube and so on is full of videos of people explaining why something is good or why it's not good. So another way to perhaps get an instinctive feeling about this is to say, for example, someone you know recommends to you a game and they recommend it for a certain reason. They say, play this game, it has great gameplay, or the abilities feel amazing. And then when you get to play that game, you find out that that's not the case. So that is perhaps a more instinctive way of realizing that someone's opinion about something is simply that. It's an opinion. It's not proof, and it's not a guaranteed relationship between the cause and effect. So the fact that the game is popular, or they believe the game is good, has no connection with the game's actual quality, and more importantly, how much you would like it if you happen to play it. So that is a very important point, and I think it needs to be made because it can save us many, many hours of trying to watch all these videos or try to understand what the developers or the reviewers and so on think, and thinking that understanding the point will somehow make us better in our work as game designers. Now, I said that postmortems are a little bit special here, so let me explain that. Postmortems usually include the process that led to a game's success or failure. So if you don't know what postmortems are, typically they're presentations where a developer from a certain team documented as much as possible the process of creating a game or a project. And after the game is released and after the game basically stops being worked on, there's no active work being done on the game anymore, and the public has received it, all the reviews are written and so on, most of the sales of the game have already happened. So at that point, the developers would present the entire process of making the game, what choices were made, and what the result was when the game was released. Now, I think, unfortunately, postmortems still fall in this category, so learning whether a game was successful or not, what led to it, can be useful, but in most of the cases it's not, because the documentation process is not captured perfectly during development, so you don't know all of the things that happened during development, and of course, even if you did, there's no way to describe them all in the 30 minutes or 1 minute that the post-mortem presentation lasts. And again, it's after the fact. So let's say that a game did not sell enough units, and a developer says, well, it's because we had difficulties with this, or because our graphics were not good, or because the gameplay was not good, and so on. There is no way of knowing exactly why every single person out there who considered playing the game did not find it fun or satisfying or whatever. It is a very difficult and presumptuous thing to say that you understand the opinion of every single player out there. It's a big trap, I think. But at least it shows you, postmortems show you a specific process that was followed during development. And depending on the quality of the postmortem, this documentation is better or worse. And I think that's a key point that we can benefit from. So to put it in a different way, let's say you're trying to learn how to make a good cup of coffee. And the person who is supposed to teach you gives you a cup of coffee that already tastes good and says, well, you see, this coffee, the beans were great, that's why it tastes good. Or the temperature is perfect, that's why it tastes good. Or the aroma is very nice, so that's why you like it. That has essentially zero value because it doesn't teach you how to make a good cup of coffee. A much, much better approach to learning it is if someone can give you a recipe that can be followed specifically to produce a good cup of coffee. So something like boil the water first to make sure it reaches this temperature, then you add the ground beans, then you let it brew, whatever, and then you end up with a cup of coffee. That knowledge, so everything you do before the release or the experience of the final product, is infinitely more valuable than a post analysis or an after the fact explanation of why something is good or not. More importantly, when you follow this process yourself, so let's say you're working on a game and you're trying to find out how to make it as good as possible. When you're documenting the process of creating the game and you're very clear about the assumptions you have about every single element of the game. So we designed this weapon to behave so and so. And when the player uses it in this way, we design it so he experiences so and so. Making this documentation before the game is experienced by other people and before it's released is infinitely more valuable because it provides, at least with you as a game designer, for a recipe for your own results. So at least you know that when I created things in a certain way, I got on average this kind of result. And looking at it from a looking forward perspective, so create something now, document it now, and see the future results, and then come back and modify it and try this again. This process has incredibly high value because it is repeatable and it's something you can gather feedback on and you can keep improving it. While the process of doing something, releasing it, seeing the reaction and trying to explain the reaction is an exercise in pointlessness. It will never find its mark. It is not provable in any way. It is completely out of your control because now it's out there and anybody can say whatever they want. And as always, people's reaction to things is varied. Some people like it, some people don't, some love it, some don't even want to hear about it. And we're always talking about the identical, exact same product that everybody has a different reaction to. So it's a very, very volatile environment, extremely difficult to control, extremely difficult to understand. And even if you say you do, there's nothing to do about it. Conversely, documenting the process that leads up to the release and being extremely clear about that and having the opportunity to go back, tweak it, and see the results later on, much like in a playtesting environment where you have a version, get some feedback, change it, try again, and so on. Having this very controlled experiment and pursuing it in this very organized way, in my experience, has infinite value because the more you engage in this exercise, by default, the better the game becomes. If a version gets you better results, then you know it is better than the one that didn't. So I felt that this needed to be said because I've never seen anybody who reviews or analyzes games in that sense to talk about the survivorship bias in analysis. I think it's an extremely large trap in the industry and in the game playing culture. And if you're someone who wants to improve the quality of your games, which I assume everybody in the industry is, then avoiding this trap and instead focusing the same energy and the same time instead in documenting the process and running these controlled experiments, I should say, is a much, much, much better investment of your time than basically trying to see what people think about things with no connection to reality, perhaps. So this has been my experience. Of course, everybody is free to use their time and then energy in the way they find best. I just had this realization. I talked about this with many people in the games industry. I realized that it's a topic that nobody really discusses, and it's a topic that seems to shape a lot of the decisions we take in the games industry. A lot of company executives, for example, or producers or directors will say, oh, that game seems to be doing well, so we should make a similar game. Or that game did well because it followed a trend, or it had good graphics, or it had good gameplay, and so on. So we should do the same. These type of comments are extremely common and extremely dangerous. I have personally seen many projects do not so well, not achieve their full potential because of blind faith in very misguided comments like that. Instead, all the projects that I have experienced that I am working on, and I know that other people are working on, that implement this process of rigorous documentation and testing before release. So finding out what systems work, what sort of reaction they get from the players, what the difference in player experiences with every little change in the basic game design or the balancing of the abilities and all that stuff. That has an infinite potential. That process has an infinite potential on improving a game. And once you're there, once you have that process going, and once it enriches your game as much as possible, I find that worrying about all the other analyses and reviews and all that stuff just fades in the background, because the process you have right now of documenting and testing just gives you such a much better result overall. Anyway, I don't know if this is something people think about. I don't know if others out there are aware of this very, very strange, very dangerous phenomenon in analysis. If you are, if you have experience with this, absolutely let me know. I would be very, very interested to hear your opinion. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And as always, have fun.